What was the final valuation on that? 58 million or something?
58 or 60 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
That's a lot of money.
What's really crazy is that Tuesday was the day I usually pull out.
Wow. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 478 being recorded on December 6th, 2017. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walworth, and I muted my mic for some reason, probably because I was clearing my throat, and I've got a little post-nasal drip and some sinus issues, and I'm getting over a cold, and so things have been a little yucky, not a whole lot of fun. Oh, and I'm
Doesn't
Josh
sound like you're
Walworth
getting over
again.
it.
I'm Alan Valentano.
And I ate Ken Addison. Szechuan sauce. It was delicious. I'm Jim Tanis, filling in for our reporters on assignment.
Ken is actually standing, or sitting, I should say, he's behind the camera here. We're both in Maui. You can't tell it from this backdrop behind me, but we're in a beautiful place. And I'm not in like a cell room.
Don't worry, you're on solid gray, so we can just key that out and put like the palm trees and the stuff behind you.
Yeah, please do that. Yeah, in post, make sure that it's tropical behind me. Behind Ken, I see palm trees, I see blue skies. There's a sunset off to the right that I can get the reflection off the paint in the walls.
Couldn't spin that camera around, huh? You just had to like,
in retrospect, we could have shot it this direction this time because in the morning when we were recording stuff, the sun was coming in and it was impossible to do so. But we're here at the Qualcomm Snapdragon Tech Summit, so we'll talk about some of that stuff here in just a second. Normal stuff to run through here. We do record the show on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Hawaii time. At PCPer.com/live. If you need a little reminder for that, you can go to PCPer.com/subscribe, sign up for our mailing list, ask for your name, your email address. We send you a notification some point before the show happens. I make no more claims about when that will or won't be. We still have our Patreon going as well. Patreon.com/PCPer. That's where you can go to become a recurring monthly contributor to the website, right? If you feel like you run an ad blocker or you just think the podcasts we do, the videos we do, the articles we do are worth it to you, you can contribute $1, $3, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, whatever you want per month. Directly goes to us and the content creation. None of that other stuff gets in the way. We greatly appreciate all of our patrons. If I have my phone here. If anybody becomes a new patron or increases during the show, I will take a note of it here and call you out.
The Sarah McLachlan, on the arms of an angel.
Yes.
And just slowly zoom in on it.
You do look kind of like a malnourished dog in that photo.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Encourage everybody. Part of the stuff that the Patreon has enabled us to do is we have our PCPer Mailbag. We're on our 20th episode. Is this the Alan episode or the Josh episode? This looks like the Alan one.
The Alan episode. I'm wearing the Death Wish Raid t-shirt.
Was that by request?
No.
Oh, okay. It's that simple as it would sound. You guys send us questions in the comments on the YouTube video or on the website, and we answer them and get back to you that way. I think it's pretty cool. And then we did a PCPer Plays, which was like probably the nerdiest one yet. This is Star Trek Judgment Rites. Yep. Not only have I never heard of it, nor never played it, I've never heard of it. What type of game was this that you guys ran through?
This is an early '90s point-and-click adventure game. There were two games in this style. 25th anniversary and Judgment Rites, and it's a episodic Star Trek themed adventure, but it also has things like space combat, really unique puzzles. It's a game that you just have to be cool enough to appreciate, and some people they just can't handle it.
I will not argue with that. Some people cannot handle it, the excitement of that. So obviously PCPer.com/podcast, go there and find URLs, links, show notes, all the subscription stuff you would need is all located there. let's go ahead and jump into.
Can I say one thing before you go?
Yeah, sure.
I'm kind of missing the edgy T-shirt.
This is my business casual Hawaii attire, right? I know somebody asked if I borrowed one of Ken's shirts earlier, and I did not. This is mine. Thank you. I appreciate that. Although now that you say it, I will point out that we've had one person comment earlier today. Two people, Ken points out, that said, "Hey, is that the team uniform?" We were walking around today, so
Ken only wears plaid ones.
If it puts your mind at ease, Josh, he's not wearing any pants.
Yeah. I think that always puts Josh at ease. Think about that.
Always.
Think about that. Right. All right, so let's talk about some of the Qualcomm stuff that happened, right? So this is a 3-day event. We're at the end of day 2 here, so we can talk about what happened to day 1 and day 2, but I don't know what's happening on day 3. The first announcement that they made was kind of the official unveiling of their Windows on Snapdragon devices. So these are notebooks, convertibles, laptops, 2-in-1s, whatever the hell people call them now. That instead of Intel processors or AMD CPUs, they have Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 at the core of them, right? And this is something we've talked about this a bunch. We've previewed this a bunch. We've talked about the implications of this. But now we know ASUS has a model. It's called the Nova Go, which is odd. HP, what's the HP one called? Is it just the NVX2? NVX2. So they went with a standard kind of traditional naming scheme. I'm a big fan of that.
The pen is thicker in one picture than in the other.
For the ASUS one, or for the HP device?
Yeah.
It's a little more excited in the second shot.
Well, in the second picture,
in the top
it's the
picture,
case and the keyboard and the screen.
I gotcha. Okay.
And it looks to me in the first photo like that pen is photoshopped in.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's fake. So the HP device is a detachable. That's right. It's a Surface style device. It's very thin. It's fanless. It's got a fold down keyboard, kickstand model, that type of stuff. It does have active stylus pen optional. I don't know if they ship with them. I actually don't know the answer to that. 12.3 inch screen, 16 by 9. What is it? Did we decide 1080p on that, Ken? Yeah. So Snapdragon 835, 4 gigs or 8 gigs, and then up to 256 gigs of storage. And the ASUS is pretty much identical hardware. It's a convertible, so it's got like the yoga style hinges. It folds back into its tablet mode. Also available in 4 or 8 gigs with up to 256 gigs of storage. There is some connectivity differences. The HP model only has USB Type-C and a single headphone port, while the ASUS machine has no Type-C, has 2 USB Type-A headphone, and then it charges through like a proprietary, semi-proprietary barrel connector, right? Which is actually really disappointing because that should be USB-C at this point. Even if you put USB Type-A ports on these systems, which I think is actually a really good idea, you should have the Type-C for charging at this point, right? Pretty much all of these thin and lights use Type-C for charging, and to break that cycle for this sucks, right? And it doesn't really make any sense. There's no, as far as I know, there's no cost advantage to this, or it can't be significant. The other thing, obviously, is all these systems have integrated in the SoC the Snapdragon X16 modem, LTE capability. Qualcomm has said that their partners are not going to be selling any Wi-Fi only models of this. So all of the laptops, notebooks you buy will be LTE capable, right? So whether or not you put a SIM in it is a different discussion about where you'll buy it and how you'll purchase the devices. But they will all have LTE modems in them. They will also all be pre-installed with Windows 10 S, which not unexpected, not great, but not an unexpected move. You can upgrade these to Windows 10, and that's free through September or December, I think. So it goes through most of 2018, actually. So if you want to upgrade that, which I see no reason why a reasonable person would not automatically do that, then you still have the capability to download your applications and run software outside of the Windows store. there were some questions in the comments actually, and I pointed this out, that this is the emulation error, and apparently I misspelled the word emulation. I just saw that we've mentioned in previous posts. It cannot run x64, it cannot run 64-bit apps, but it will run x86 apps with a handful of exceptions. Well, I say a handful, but an unknown number of exceptions, right? Anything that uses kernel mode drivers, right, as opposed to just, being something where the OS, that lets the OS handle all of those different traits and specifications, will probably not run. So things like, it's kind of a problem for us to review PC Mark. PC Mark 8 won't run on these devices because it installs kernel mode drivers that it uses for kind of the simulation side of things. So it's interesting in that regard. $600 to $800 depending on your configuration. We're waiting for final devices to do reviews on and do testing on. Initial indications are that these aren't going to be as performant as the Intel machines, right? The Intel Core i5s, whatever, are going to be faster. This is more in line with the Core M3 style performance. They're fanless designs, like many of the Core M devices are. But what their claims are, and what ASUS was on stage, HP was on stage, ASUS claimed 22 hours of battery life on this. And I don't know if HP gave a specific number, but it's something like that. Microsoft came on stage and talked about the idea of not charging your laptop for a week, which I have a bit of a problem with. It really comes down to what your usage style is. If you use your laptop for a couple hours a day, 2-3 hours a day, you can get through a work week without having to charge your machine. The benefit that they're touting with that claim is the idea of connected standby, where when the computer doesn't really ever go to sleep or hibernate, the screen shuts off when you close it, and it still maintains data connectivity. But just like your phone, it's in a super low power state, and it's able to, your email is always up to date, your notifications are up to date, all that type of stuff would still be happening in the background, but it does it in a much lower power state than anything from Intel can really do. So it's only two devices, but it feels like a kind of a watershed point in time, right? Where Intel now has, they have competition from Ryzen Mobile on the high end, a lot of high competition on the graphic side. Now they're getting competition in this highly portable, highly mobile segment, people who want LTE connectivity, people who are looking for a full day, an actual realistic full day of battery life. And Qualcomm is going to have these machines out. Timing wise, I was hoping we'd get them by the end of the year. It looks more like January timeframe for shipping, but it should be sooner rather than later. I was hoping we'd get them before CES, but we may not actually be able to do that. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this. Is it? I was on Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott today, and we had this discussion about. So say you get the highest configuration, you get the 8 gig, 256 gigs of storage, you're talking about a $799 laptop. There are a ton of Intel-based PCs you can get for $799. Not as thin, not as light, not as portable, but most importantly, not as much battery life. So how much performance would you be willing to trade in order to get the LTE connectivity and the battery life of these devices? I posit the question to you. Please, all four of you, don't answer at the same time.
I'd trade a lot of performance. For me, it's about the battery life. I think I like what they're aiming for here. Give me something that I can write in, browse the web, and check email, and do light Photoshop editing. Nothing, not heavy video or anything. Just enough that I can get through the day of publishing articles or writing a book or whatever. If I can take that and work on it for several hours a day and get a week out of it, that's the killer. I have a powerful PC at home. I don't think many people would want this to be their only device, but as a road warrior mobile workstation for light tasks, that's a game changer. Getting that true all day or 24-hour battery life.
Yep. Anybody else?
It's a wee little SharePoint machine. From an enterprise standpoint, it makes sense for someone who is constantly roaming around and is at the point where they don't even like an ultra portable because that 5 pounds is just too much for them. But there are people out there like that. So this thing, boom, you can hit Excel online, Word online, PowerPoint online. You can hold the damn thing anywhere you go. You turn it on, and you're not going to have to wait for your emails to populate because they're going to be there just like the experience with your cell phone. So I can see a definite usage case for, some enterprise people. I think a lot of people are going to fire up YouTube and get a little bit disappointed that it's not going to give them the performance that they were kind of hoping for video entertainment. But if you're working, it makes a lot of sense because you don't need any power locally if you're used to using all of the online tools that Office does now. So I could see this making an impact. I can also see people saying the price is a little bit too high. $800 for a giant ass cell phone it feels wrong, but the iPhone X is $1,200.
Right. Keep in mind that some of the flagship Snapdragon 835 phones are going to cost you $1,200. Yeah.
Also true.
Yeah. There's some comments in here about in the chat about they're not convinced that the ARM-based stuff will offer a good experience with x86 applications because you have to go through an emulation error, and that's true. So anything that doesn't run from the Windows Store that is kind of encoded and compiled for the ARM architecture does have to go through that emulation error, and there is a performance penalty. I don't really have a way to quantify what that performance penalty is yet. And the benefit for Qualcomm and maybe the problem for reviewers is that traditional benchmarks don't really run, right? So we talked about PC Mark's not going to run, SysMark's not going to run. You can run something. You can maybe run something like Audacity encode, or you can run H.264 encoding applications, but it all depends on what drivers they install, right? For example, I was able to play video through the HD Home Run in the Office on one of these devices, but we had to download the MPEG-2 decoder from the Windows Store in order for it to work. I would say, the Office I have run on these devices is x86 emulated, downloaded from Microsoft.com, not through the store, and it runs fine, right? I have not installed Photoshop on it yet. That's kind of like my next big step is what happens when I put a bulky application like Photoshop on a machine like this. Can I do that basic photo editing? Like I'm not doing thousands of images when I'm on work trips, right? I'm doing 10 images for a news post or a review. Do I have the ability to do that, and can it hold on to it? I think there's still a question mark. I think it will do better than most people think. And the only other thing I would say is that these systems, I would not recommend anybody buy a system with 4 gigs of memory if 8 gigs is available, right? Because once you browsers, even if you just have tabs of browsers open, you're using 90+% of your system memory when you do that. And when you have to start swapping, now you're looking at a non-PCIe NVMe storage solution. This is Snapdragon 835. It's using UFS, which is reasonably fast, but definitely slower than what you get on, even SATA SSDs in terms of a latency standpoint. And as a result, if you have to swap between memory and storage, it's going to be a pain in the ass, right? So 8 gigs, I think, is where you should go with this. And I think that will benefit the fact that it is a slower processor and kind of a slower infrastructure along the way. So,
have they done something interesting in the back to let you use the 8 gigs around? Because you mentioned it's 32-bit only, right? It's not running a 64-bit OS.
So the operating system will run in 64, but the apps don't. In the native ARM system, right? But when you do the emulation stuff only works with it's 32-bit. So each individual application might only be able to access 4 gigs, maybe. But yeah. But stuff like Edge, is built in. If you use Edge browser, that's fine. The biggest question I think we'll have is like Chrome. Chrome is an app that will never be in the Windows Store, probably, right? And it will never be compiled for UWP. So, but it's also the world's most popular web browser for systems like this. So now what do you do, right? And I imagine that's a place where Qualcomm and Microsoft have spent a lot of time tweaking software to make the emulation as clean and as fast as possible. So it'll be interesting.
It's all interesting, Ryan.
Go ahead, Josh. What was that?
I said it's all interesting.
It is really interesting.
I'm going to be kind of curious to see. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting to see a bunch of changes happening in this space that haven't in a while.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Windows RT disaster, and before that, way before that, we had the Transmeta guys who had an architecture that had an active translation layer that was, software, and it, apparently worked well. Who ended up with Transmeta? Was that Intel?
I don't know. I think so.
I can't remember.
I think so.
Either.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how emulation, because we have CPU cycles to spare in many instances. I mean,
oh sure,
you got a quad core 2.4 gigahertz ARM processor. I mean, that's pretty good throughput, and especially for any kind of office type stuff, web browsing, like Jim was saying. I mean, it's more than adequate to give you a speedy feeling if the software is well optimized for it. So it's
right.
Again, the proof is going to be in the pudding. We'll see how it goes.
Yep, we will see very shortly. And then today what they announced was the Snapdragon 845. So this is the next generation SoC that will be coming in smartphones, they say in the first half of 2018. Your Galaxy S9s. Basically, any flagship Android phone that isn't built by Huawei is using the high-end Snapdragon devices, right? So they were all based on 835. We assume the next gens will all be based on 845. And they went into a little bit of detail of some of the architectural stuff, some new CPU, some new GPU, some new ISP, some new DSP. Everything has kind of been re-architected. They talked about imaging and AI kind of being the focus for that. A little disappointing in the presentations. They didn't show a whole lot of performance data. The GPU is claimed to be 30% faster. The CPU is claimed to be 30% faster. The Adreno 630 is apparently a completely new architectural design, right? It's still like a tile-based renderer and all that, but it's apparently not just a slightly tweaked version of what the 540 was. So I'm very curious to talk more with these guys about what that actually means and how much they're willing to divulge in terms of that architecture and what that, how does that, did they change stuff in order to interact with other elements of the system so that they could have improved heterogeneous compute, right? On the CPU side, it's now an octa-core setup, or it is an octa-core setup, again, for high performance, for high efficiency cores. The big change there is slightly higher clock speeds, but each core now has a dedicated L2 cache, and there is a shared L3 cache across all 8 cores, which sounds a little similar to what the ARM Dynamic was, right, Josh?
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask that. I mean, did Qualcomm license the dynamic architecture from? I mean, it's an improvement upon A75 and A55 that they did custom work to. Yep. So that's it's still a semi-custom license. It's not off-the-shelf parts that they claim that they were able to, but they did confirm that it was A75 and A55 based. And they did some tweaks to, like one of the things they did is they added a 3 megabyte system cache to it, which is actually on die, but off to the side of all these other modules, right? So now this is a place where the graphics, the CPU, the image processing, the DSP can share data, right? So really I feel like it's taken a decade, but we're getting closer into that heterogeneous mindset that really AMD kind of pioneered the idea of with the HSA and that foundation. And that's kind of where the customization that essentially
came from.
is. I'm sorry for the latency and me, interrupting you, but that essentially is dynamic. I mean, they have that L3 cache in there, kind of off to the side. So when you do cache snoops and whatnot, it's a different hierarchy than what you would expect with like an x86 CPU or previous ARM products. It depends on where it's snooping at, is which pathway it goes to, because the L3 is not where you would typically expect it to be, I guess, in a 10,000 foot view in terms of topology. And so, it sounds like it would be silly for any of these guys who are making their own architectures to ignore dynamic, because it adds a lot to the SoC in terms of internal communications, latency, flexibility, the ability to utilize PCIe 4.0 controllers, and then through that can do cache coherency through PCI Express. So yeah, they're the first out of the gates with an A75, A55 with dynamic, because this was this is kind of a late 2018 product that ARM was thinking about, but Qualcomm they're right there.
Yep. I think it's I keep waiting for them to tell me more about the architecture and the design side. And they, and what Qualcomm wants to tell you is the story about what it's all going to turn into. Right now you can do HDR video capture. Now you can do 4K at higher frame rates. Now you can do these real-time kind of AI filters and stuff to images. And that's I get it. I understand why they want to do that, but from a hardware guy standpoint, I want to be able to understand the architecture, and I think there's benefit to them still to talk about that stuff as they continue to as they need to prove to the outside world that they are an innovation powerhouse, right? That they're not just kind of slapping things together from ARM and making something out of it, that they're doing real important work that needs to continue. So, I don't know. This is what we'll see in middle of 2018, it seems like. And hopefully, this will eventually come to the Windows on Snapdragon notebooks we talked about as well. Some variant of 845 will show up and be higher performance. And, I posted on Twitter a couple of pictures. I saw a demo today where, they had the Manhattan mobile benchmark running, and the 845 was running at the same, they capped them at the same frame rate, and the 845 was able to run at 2.9 watts, while the 835 ran at 3.8 watts. So a pretty big efficiency jump, considering there was no process tech change, and this was all an architectural difference, right? So there's a lot of potential for 845 to make some of the more mainstream important differences, like the just power consumption, battery life, heat, usability. While how hot does it get? How long can you be in a VR headset or XR headset or whatever it is based on that device? I think a lot of that gets changed for the middle of the year. So. Any other thoughts on 845?
No, I think I espoused them all.
Okay. All right. There was one other thing on the Qualcomm side before we move on. A guy from AMD came out on stage during the press conference on the first day, which got a lot of like rumbles and grumbles in the crowd, like, we want to bring out our partner, somebody, from AMD. I think people were thinking somebody was buying somebody or licensing some graphics IP or doing whatever you have. But as it turns out, what they announced was that the Ryzen mobile platforms were going to support the Snapdragon X16 LTE modem, meaning that Ryzen notebooks with their higher graphics performance, all that stuff, will have the ability to support the same kind of mobile connectivity. Now, connected standby is a different thing. The ability for the system to go to sleep and run in really low power states, but still background sync data. I doubt that Ryzen has the capability to do that, but it will still have the ability to have kind of the always-on data stuff. So a little bit less exciting of a news announcement than we thought when we first heard he was coming out. It was Kevin Lansing was the guy from AMD, who was kind of their lead of their client business unit over there. So still neat to see, right? So Qualcomm has a lot of balls up in the air. They've got Apple to deal with. They've got Broadcom to deal with. Plus, they have to sell product as well. So it seems based on the reactions I see here from other media, other analysts, that they seem to be on the right track.
This latency's killing me, man. Killing me.
I know.
I can't interrupt you nearly as effectively as I used to. But I was going to ask, is Eric Deemer still there? Is he still kind of in charge of the graphics?
I don't I'm gonna say yes because I haven't been told otherwise, but he's not here. I don't. Is Bernie gone? He's not in the room anymore, is he? Okay, I was gonna ask somebody, but I will ask that tonight actually because I totally spaced on that, and that would have been somebody I would have liked to seen and talk to and ask questions of as well. So, all right, let's move on. I've got a handful more minutes here, so I will navigate us through our first non-Qualcomm story, the Elgato 4K capture, which is a story that Ken wrote. Damn it, he's behind the camera instead of in front of it. This is a 4K 60 HDMI 2.0 capture card, right? We had ordered one. Who was the one we ordered from that was bad? It did not actually capture it. Like the Amazon listing said HDMI 2.0, but when we got the card, it literally said on the input, like printed on the card or on the back panel underneath it, HDMI 1.4. Yeah. So this one does not have that problem. This is from Elgato. You know, they're a well-known name in kind of the capture world for gamers and enthusiasts and a lot of other stuff. It's a PCIe by 4 card to do 4K 60 HDMI 2, and it works. You know, what else we need to say about this one, Ken? What's the price on this? $499 or 400 $500. You know, so this is definitely something that you should need before you just purchase. 1080p 60 is fine for most, but it does have capture software in it, so it's able to do 4K 60 capture. Looks like up to 140 megabits per second you can capture, which, by the way, is 58.7 gigabytes per hour of footage, and that's actually not too bad. That's compressed, right? Is that H.264 or 5? You think
58.7 gigabytes per minute?
No. That says hour there, doesn't it?
Oh,
pretty sure that says hour. Yeah, 58. That would be when we do our raw capture.
Oh yeah, the raw capture. Yeah, that was doing a gig per second.
Yeah. It does have a heatsink style on it. Is it actually it doesn't functional?
It doesn't actually make contact.
Oh,
yeah, it's just the case.
Yeah, it's more just like a metal cover.
So it heats up the chip more than it should.
It's matte black, so I mean, it should theoretically conduct the radiant heat out, but like still, it's
black body radiation.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah, but it doesn't help that it only has a very few vent holes in it, and the vent holes are not necessarily like conducive to if you had air moving from front to back. Like,
sure,
the plate just kind of like blocks it. It doesn't really kind of let it through, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but we didn't have any cooling issues with this.
We didn't have any cooling issues. But it does warm up when you're doing captures. Yeah. Like
it just seems. I mean, it's clear that the shroud is there for looks and style, and obviously it looks way better than just having a bare PCB. It looks like there's some leads there for LEDs, so you do get lights because of it. So that's great. And it just worked, right? Like we were able to capture 4K 60 out of it. We had this in the office to test for like consoles and capturing out of the Xbox One X and stuff. And it did that $400 price tag. And considering the kind of the next step is the standalone, Atomos Ninja Inferno, which is about $1,000 capture device, field capture device. $400 doesn't seem that bad, right?
We should point out too that it doesn't capture HDR, which isn't surprising, but it also doesn't pass through HDR, which is disappointing.
Oh.
So you can capture your game, but if you wanted to, all of these Elgato cards have the output, so you can get the zero latency monitor. And if you wanted to game while also capturing for things like streaming, you as the user are not going to be able to enjoy that HDR experience.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good point out. I didn't even mention that it had the pass through on there as well, which we needed as well for our testing. So, what else did we have on our list? A Cooler Master power supply review posted by Lee on this one, 550 watt, very small unit. The MasterWatt series, as the name gives you. This is something that goes up to 1200 watts, but you can tell from the size of this guy, it is not that. 550 watt semi. What does semi fanless operation mean? Just that the fan stops spinning, I guess, at some point.
Yeah,
partially modular.
40C it'll run without a fan.
$60. Got it. 5-year warranty, single 12-volt output. You know, this is, what are there? There's 2 PCIe connections on it. So if multi GPU is a potential for you, this is not the power supply for it. $60 though, it does get you a pretty reliable system. Lower on the warranty rates than we would like to see, I believe. I guess I'm just kind of used to seeing 7 and 10 on units, but maybe it's all on the higher cost prices.
Are those caps big enough for Ken?
No.
No. Didn't think they were.
No cap is big enough for Ken, I say. Yeah. $59 on Newegg. You know, I mean, it met all the specifications, right? 550 watt continuous, fanless below 15% load, 80 plus bronze. The fans were quiet. The weakness that he pointed out here was that it has TPO caps that only have an 85C rating. So not only are they not big enough for Ken, they don't get hot enough for Ken either.
I bet they'll still shock him though.
Yeah, probably. I think that seems like a likely outcome. Yeah.
Tell him it tastes like bubble gum and lick it.
All right, I think I'll make. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'll do this this will be my last story here, and then I'll let the other 7 or 8 people or whoever on the podcast take over. It got really dark behind you, Ken. That's what happens when the sun goes down.
Yes, Ryan. When the sun goes down,
into a dark place.
It gets dark.
I don't like it.
Sundown.
Well, wait a minute.
You better take care.
This isn't even really a story. I don't know why I picked this for my last one.
Okay, one at a time.
Up downstairs.
Jeremy, tell me about this thing.
It's a rose.
It's a what?
It's a rose. They named this after the Adrenalin rose.
Oh, gotcha.
For
named
reasons yet to be known. You are now gaining all of the information that we have. The card is now self-assembling. It does take itself apart and glow on the inside, so you know it's running.
Wait.
Or at least I think that's what the upgrade is implying anyways. Apart from that, there's not really much information that it came with it. This is they've been doing these rebrands once a year for a while. We saw the Crimson edition. Right now we're doing the Relive or Relive edition. So this will take us into next year. It'll be the Adrenalin family of drivers, and we'll see probably in the not too distant future. It's scheduled just before the end of the year. What this brings.
Yeah, you know, it's their annual cadence of major driver releases. I think the one last year was maybe a little bit disappointing in the kind of features that they added and offered to it. I mean, they did a good job. Or I'm thinking of the mid-year refresh. I will say I have seen what they're introducing on this one, and it's actually really cool what they were able to do. You know, don't expect. There were people I saw in the comments on this video and on our post talking about, oh, finally we're going to get this huge Vega performance increase. I hate. Let me just settle everybody down here. That's not going to happen. There's not a 20% increase in GPU performance that's happening with this. This is much more about features and capabilities and UI elements and making everything easier to use. And it actually does a very, very good job of that without going into any more detail. But like the way you interact with the software and the way you can take advantage of the capabilities that they have built into it is going to change pretty dramatically. And I think it's really cool to see. So I'm looking forward to testing it when I get back from here. And being able to give it a try before it launches. Did they announce when it was going to launch?
It'll be before the end of the year, sometime this month.
It's like the middle of December. Just that's what it is. Yeah. So there you go. That's the Adrenalin, but without an E on the end, as Jeremy pointed out. It is the rose, hence the red, and not the drug that courses through your body.
Still a much
keep
better
me awake.
name. Much better name than Relive or whatever the
Relive.
See, exactly.
I think it was
right there.
Relive, yeah.
Crimson
But hence the
Relive.
problem.
It just didn't.
12 months later, we
Didn't
still
capture.
don't know. That's not a good thing.
All right, everybody. I'm going to disconnect here and go meet my wife.
Good.
And go to
Tired of
dinner.
hearing your
So,
voice.
Out of here.
hey, bye, guys. Don't talk mean about me while I'm gone.
Too late.
We do it when you're here.
Did you see the picture that we posted of you?
I did see the picture. Yes. If only I would wear that.
You're
bathing
looking
suit,
very
right?
toned
You know?
these days. Very toned.
Yeah, I wish. Okay. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
I didn't see the picture, but is the bathing suit plaid?
Alan, you just
So I know
lost
it's
your
got
mic.
stripes, though.
I lost my mic.
Yeah, you got some serious static coming through your mic now.
In other news this week, there is a rumor that Intel is intentionally holding back 10 nanometer, or what's really like the 10 nanometer equivalent, right? Because it's not actually 10 nanometer
No,
anymore.
actually, they're closer to 10 nanometer than anybody else.
Oh, I'm sure they are, but I doubt the actual feature size is 10. Like maybe a few
Yeah,
things might have that feature
yeah,
size.
a couple of
A couple of really easy things to make on there, but
of all the marketing speak that all the manufacturers have, Intel is typically the closest to kind of reality.
yeah.
And so 10 nanometer that's a big jump. People don't realize how big of a jump it is. I mean, we went seemingly from 22 to 14 in not necessarily a blink of an eye, but it was relatively quick, 3 to 4 years. And then we've been on 14 nanometer for quite a while. And they thought, hey, 10 nanometer is not going to be an issue. We're going to get there. We're going to start producing stuff. All of our lives will be happy and things will be gay. And it hasn't turned out that way at all. Fudo wrote this original article, and he was claiming things like they were not seeing... No. Wafers were approximately $500 to $700 in price going through the process. And first of all, that's absolute bullshit. I mean, with a cutting edge technology,
Yeah, it seems low.
wafer costs are more in the range of $7,000 to $10,000 per wafer, and that's taking the slow boat. When you start doing hot lots, you're anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000, and hot lots is when they put the wafers through as fast as possible. So what happens is once a wafer in a hot lot goes through an end of a particular process, then the stuff that's ahead of it is kind of benched, and then that goes through the next line. So you've got, litho and etch and deposition and scrub and all this other stuff going on. And for just regular wafers going through, it takes approximately 4 months, and it costs in between $7,000 and $10,000 to do. And so I'm not entirely sure where Fudo got his information from, because it's just not true. And again, if I could only reiterate, 10 nanometers is hard, and Intel is hitting some real issues, and they're trying to do quad patterning on these chips because EUV is not quite ready yet. They're not willing to go into production. There's a handful of 100-watt lamps out there. They need seemingly, I think, 250 watt is the sweet spot for really big primetime manufacturing. And there are, again, only a couple of examples of those around in the market, in the industry. And so with quad patterning, I mean, it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. They do a litho with certain structures in there, then they do the etch, then they do another litho pass and another etch, and then another litho, and they do that 4 times to get all of the structures in there that they need. And this takes time. This takes a lot of manpower, and it's just ludicrous. It's hard to do. And even though Samsung says, hey, we've got our 10 nanometer stuff out, it is far closer to Intel's 14 nanometer than it is closer to Intel's 10 nanometer. And so, sorry about that. I have a child who's sick and is coughing behind me.
Oh.
Anyway, where was I at? Okay, anyway, 10 nanometer. They're starting to experience some really interesting electrical phenomena and stuff that really is in kind of, the quantum landscape. I mean, it's not quite, like, hey, we've got electron tunneling, we've got entanglement, we've got, electrons suddenly just appearing in a gate where they shouldn't be. But it's stuff that's kind of close to that. And there's a lot of variability in the chips that are coming out of this process. And I think this is probably the primary reason why Intel has not released a 10 nanometer part. I mean, they could do it, but it would be extremely expensive. Their yields would be kind of crap. Their bins would be probably even worse. And you'd only get, how hard is it to find an 8700K? And that's a 14 nanometer plus product. And going to 10 nanometer at this time is just not something they can do. So Fudo, he went around this and said, well, they're kind of holding it back, even though they could possibly do it. And well, yeah, they could possibly do it, but there's still a lot of work to do to make this a more viable process technology. And again, don't think about the other guys saying, well, we've got a 10 nanometer up and running. Well, the complexity, the geometries of those other process technologies are not in the ballpark of where Intel is doing when it comes to 10 nanometers. So anybody else have anything to say other than me?
We're just letting you finish.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you finish.
I'm going to let you finish. But Intel has the best process of all time. Of all time!
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll go on Leno and apologize.
Yep.
Okay.
Even if the cost and the difficulty weren't a factor, I think AMD gave Intel a bigger scare, a bigger push with Ryzen than perhaps many were expecting. So if they could get a better performing part on a better process out there, they would. They want to maintain a pretty good gap.
And they are.
Yeah, and they
because 14 nanometer plus is a very good process.
Right. I'm saying they would want to go.
It is a little bit looser in terms of geometries, and that cuts down kind of on the leakage, and it has improved the transistor switching performance as well, with a little bit increasing of die size, but it's still a really good process, and it's fast. And overclock a Ryzen to 4.9 gigahertz, and I dare you to do that, because it just, unless you got liquid nitrogen, it just, you're not going to do it. But you can do it with that 8700K pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're correct.
So fake
AMD
news.
Put a scare into them.
Fake news, right?
Fake news.
Yeah.
All right.
And wafer is not $500 to $700 to process.
Yeah. I've been making a hell of a margin on the CPUs off of that thing, if that's how much it costs.
Yeah, if you'd think.
All right, next up. EVGA launches GTX 1070 Ti FTW Ultra Silent graphics card. So looks like just a bigger cooler.
It's a 2.5 slot, so quite a bit thicker.
Yeah.
Wait. How can you have 2.5 slots? Just call it 3.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Notice the bracket is actually 3. I don't understand why they call them 2.5. Yes, I know technically it's 2.5, but and I guess
if you had something below it.
Well, yeah. I guess if you're going to SLI them, you're not so worried about, like, you have a half a slot of gap for there to be decent airflow into the into the cooler. That's fine. But and it's even a taller cooler. Notice it's like the FTW3 style height on the PCB. Like, look at how much further that extends above the bracket.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So, like, be careful what case you're putting this in, because it might actually interfere, depending on the case.
Yeah.
So the idea is super huge cooler on a card that normally draws only 180 watts. However, there's 2 8-pin connectors which means this card is supposed to be able to hit a 235 watt TDP. I'm guessing they might also have one of those switches on it, like they do on some of the FTW series, where it's like a separate BIOS that has a higher.
Yeah, it's
higher
got dual
voltage.
BIOS.
Okay, so then that's what they'll do. It's you throw the switch, and then it just your max TDP goes higher, and basically you could just slide that power limit slider, like 10% higher or whatnot in Precision X.
$500.
$500.
List price.
Yeah. I mean, probably wouldn't go for that. Especially since the regular, 1070 Ti, EVGA, not the OEM style coolers, but like the decent cooler, like the dual fan ACX style, not this way overkill 2.5 slot one, but like the regular ones, they were supposed to be like 450, I think. And they were like above 480.
Yeah.
I looked a couple days ago, and they were already creeping up actually, because the mining stuff started picking up again over the past 2 weeks, and it was just a matter of time before the GPUs took a turn. They almost hit MSRPs. Almost.
Our long national nightmare was almost over.
It was almost over, and then everything turned again, and yeah. So good luck to you.
But I mean, if you're looking for a ultra, because again, you're right, with this style of card, you're not going ultra small. You're not going really small form factor. But if you wanted a mid-sized chassis, something like a Fractal design with like good acoustic properties, and you wanted to game at a pretty decent frame rate with minimal noise, something like this would be a better idea than a blower style 1080 that you could also get at that same price theoretically.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
So there's that.
Well, good luck finding one.
Yeah.
I think it's all moot at this point. Thanks to people like him.
Sorry. Jeremy, I'll just let you read the title to your own post here.
Well, I mean, whose is longer? We know that the Threadripper is girthier, but the Ryzen might not be as long as the Kaby.
Well, but I mean, motion is a factor, not the be all end all, but how you use it.
Well, in this case, it's endurance.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to have the staying power, and
although if you're doing everything else wrong, endurance can go bad. I mean, sometimes I just want it to be over.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean, right? Let's not kid ourselves.
Okay. All right.
That's what she always tells me.
There's usually some subtle hints. But so the tech reports set up a very bizarre test. So what they did is hook up a 1440p display and turn off the internal display on an Acer Swift 3 with an Intel i5 8250U and the HP Envy X360, which is a Ryzen 5 2500U. It's not a mobile test, but it is, local gaming test. And so they ran the batteries, ran straight off battery to see which of the two architectures offered better battery life. And unfortunately for AMD, the contest was not even close.
Wow.
Yeah.
2x.
Yeah.
Greater than 2x.
Huge.
It caused a huge
the
controversy
second one that
on
they
Twitter.
did.
It did?
Yeah.
What was the controversy? Because the numbers are like right there.
That this is not a fair test.
Well,
Not
it's
a
a
fair
weird test, but it's not a bad test.
No, it's not. I mean, I agree with their reasoning.
It's a decent methodology. You're plugging in an external display to try to eliminate the power draw from the internal
Exactly.
display.
I know. I'm just saying that the people who are upset about this were arguing that that's not the way you should do it, because that's not what a user's going to do.
I mean, I seriously doubt Jeff's intention in this article was to imply that people are going to be using these laptops all the time, plugged into a display and get on battery. Right?
I'm just reporting.
No, I'm with
what
you.
I read on the internet.
Yeah, no. Well, this is what happens when you try to.
They tried was killing off the MX150, and the Intel jumped up about 65% more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Which makes you wonder, why is that display drawing that much more on the one system?
And what's the difference in the architecture that it's that much more efficient driving a larger off-screen display?
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Interesting data point. Next up, well, Tim's not here to discuss
Now
it.
onto
So.
the spooky stuff.
Oh, well, okay. So there's been this big deal with the Intel Management Engine and related exploits, which, you know, might give you access to not just ring 0 or ring -1 or -2, but -3, basically like the equivalent of you physically pressing power buttons and reset buttons and things on the system. Like you're basically better than bare metal, way better than root access. Like, yeah, you know,
Well,
this is...
it's so low that the guy who owns the system can't access it to know if he's been grabbed or not.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's literally...
Like, you literally can't know.
Yeah. And I mean, this stuff
which is terrifying.
This stuff is meant to actually help like system administrators and like pushing out, like you could, you know, if you had the right tools and you had a bunch of these specific systems and you had them all set up to use the management engine, like you could do all sorts of things like reimage systems and just like system could be like blue screening and you could like reboot it and lay down a new image and stuff like that. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, from an integration standpoint, it makes lots of sense.
It's wonderful from an integration standpoint. However, you kind of need the security to be good.
Yeah, you got to lock that down.
Because you can access the management engine via the LAN port on the system, and it bypasses everything else on the system. It's just a straight shot, straight to this special firmware that you can't touch with anything that's on in user land or even in OS land. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So, Dell's answer to this, I guess until Microsoft
we should say Intel has said that they're not going to be patching this. Patches aren't going to be really widely available till next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's vendors that are releasing them, not Intel.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's a huge cluster, whatever, because like not only does Intel have to patch their management engine, but their management engine is a portion of the BIOS. So
wait, isn't it part of the firmware? It's below the BIOS, isn't it?
Well, you can.
Well, there's two parts to it. There's the BIOS
tentacles
interface.
up into it.
I think you can. Well, there's a couple of ways to update it, but I think there's some ways you can actually update it, like from within Windows. But it's like there's some public-private key thing that's got to negotiate or whatever. Yeah, it's like it's tricky to do that, but it's probably easier to do as part of a BIOS update, I would guess, just because you could have the negotiation happen in there. Like Intel's RAID controller is like a part of the BIOS. Right. Like its firmware is a part of the system firmware, right?
Yeah, so you just got a one-shot upgrade.
Yeah, so you can kind of like wait, you know, so if Intel updated their RAID, you know, their boot stuff for their RAID, you know, you wouldn't get that update until your motherboard maker pushed out a BIOS that included it, right? Same kind of deal for this. You either need a really special tool or something, you know, just manufacturer level tool needs to come out. So in other words, it's like the whole cell phone OS thing for Android, right? Like Google pushes out the new OS update. Now you gotta wait for all the carriers to push it out. If there's a big security vulnerability, now you're just waiting that much longer. And then it gets all staggered. You know, you'll have 10% of the devices will get updated right away, and then another 20%, another 50%, you know, just a really bad thing when you have worse than root, potentially, vulnerabilities on given sets of hardware. So Dell's just like, hey, we're going to make a SKU available that just we disable it before we ship it.
Well, that's so people
It'll
saw.
cost you $20.
Well, yeah,
that's unfortunate.
So people saw that suddenly this option to ship without the Intel Management Engine was available in the configurator for Dell systems.
Yeah.
That's what triggered this. But then Dell came out and clarified and said, well, hey, we've been offering this for a long time, but only to select customers, enterprise customers. And we're going to expand that, but that whole configurator on the web, that was an error. We're going to take that away. If you want this, just call us. Anyone can get it, but you got to call us. And I don't know what kind of hoops they're going to put you through. And again, I'm not even sure if that fee is going to be is applicable in the scenario they're now
It might not even be a fee.
Yeah,
it might just be, hey, please disable this.
Yeah. So if you go to Dell's website now, you're probably not going to see this. I think they removed it. But if you want a Dell system with IME disabled, you have to call them, and they provided a number. It's not here, but I saw they have a number in an update they provided.
I have a speculation on why there was an option and a fee that was, you know, available to specific OEM customers. There's probably certain three-letter agencies that have to really harden their systems, and don't want like any kind of remote access capability.
Or foreign customers too.
Or foreign customers, yeah. So,
I mean, for people who care about this, I mean, honestly, for how many people you know who have computers care? I mean, well, our peers do.
I
Most
work
of them don't
in an
know.
enterprise, man. I've got sysadmins that can now build a house out of what came out of their arrears because of this.
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm saying is consumers, end users who go into Best Buy, who go into Micro Center, well, not Micro Center, Best Buy, and just pick up something.
Sure. I mean, the problem is
Pro?
Now I will say this.
Exactly.
I will say this.
They're not going to know.
It's not. Okay, so I'm pretty sure the management engine stuff is actually like, it's not routable. It's not going to hop through NAT the other way and come in the internet through your router and just manage to make it to your system.
Right.
In other words, the management engine doesn't actively
little Johnny
send.
couldn't get on Xbox Live, and so he put the whole house in the DMZ.
Right, exactly. So if your LAN on your house is exposed to the internet, now you're in trouble. Right.
Well, you were in trouble before this too.
Or
I guess,
if an attacker gets onto your network via any other exploit, then anything else, once he knows how to get into the management engine stuff, everything connected on that network is just done.
Yeah. No, but my password's not password. It's password 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're safe.
Totally fine.
Yeah, you'll be safe. Yeah.
So for people who do care, and I wasn't trying to make a big flame war here. It was like, who cares about this? Because people do care.
I think just a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, most people
is the problem.
Wouldn't know.
Right.
Or wouldn't even think to understand what this is possible.
Yeah, a lot of people up until the past, say 3 months, where this started being a newsy thing, where there was seemingly a string of news related to this. I don't think people had any idea. It was just some annoying driver thing they had to add after they did their Windows install, and they had to download from Microsoft so that all their device manager things didn't have, question marks next to them, right?
Right.
They're just like, it's management engine, which it does have some other, features like the OS can get some hardware level information, low level hardware information about the system into Windows, but that's just like a side feature.
Right.
That's not, the management, the true management part of it.
Well, what I was trying to get at, for people who care and don't want any of this, I mean, so for our options now, we have Purism. They use Core Boot. System 76, I believe they're also using Core Boot. Dell, which is using a modified blob.
Yep.
Who else is there? I mean, does the Ryzen, non-pro Ryzen, have any sort of management engine on top of that?
Weren't there some, there was one motherboard maker that said that they were gonna support it right away as soon as Intel put it out, or I don't know if it wasn't it like ASRock or somebody?
I think ASRock's the ones who had someone had a leaked screenshot of the BIOS where it said disable IME.
Yeah, like where you had the option. I don't know if they've pushed it out yet, but I like they were early to say that. They were one of the early ones. But still, it's just this huge hodgepodge of stuff. Like, you have a system that's 3-4 years old. You're not going to get a BIOS update for that.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. Probably even from ASRock.
And when you're running a server, that's a big problem because you're not buying a new one every year or two.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
And you can't take it down.
Yeah.
Not without a lot of special permission and arguing, because you're trying to explain this to someone from the business side and they're like, I don't care. Go away. Don't interrupt me. It's like, no, you do care. Your clients care. No, I don't. Go away.
Has anyone
So it's going to be interesting.
Has anyone isolated okay, these are the ports or these are the protocols that are used or whatever, so you can just kind of maybe kill it at your router?
There's the ME cleaner.
What does that do?
But that's a completely unsupported thing that I have no hands-on experience with. That's the Core Boot thing they use to take the blobs from Intel and rip everything out except for what's required to boot.
Okay.
It takes it from I think it removes 80% of the functionality of it, but it still boots it. I mean, it's literally just the CPU, the memory, and the drive controller initialization left over.
So somehow it accesses that chunk of firmware and just it
just rips it out.
Okay.
Because the signing is done per module, isn't it?
I would guess.
Yeah, I've been reading so much stuff on this lately. So
how are they doing it without?
They reversed it.
Oh, okay.
So the signatures still work. The signatures are still valid for each module.
Yeah.
They just full outright remove modules.
Oh, Oh, okay. All right.
So, but I would think that would invalidate any warranty you have.
Oh yeah.
You know, it kills me that they had signature controls on the modules, but like had this just really piece of crap, vulnerable as hell, you know, chunk of code running on the exposed side of it, like with, you know, the network connected to it.
I mean, any code in the wild eventually will be exploitable. It's
sure.
Not if, when.
Sure. But it's
and
not
the
hard.
extra benefit is with closed stuff, you don't know it until someone actually brags about it.
But the thing is, it's not hard to make the very front door super hardened.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, it's not hard to do. Okay, make sure buffer overflows can't mess this up. Make sure the initial contact is just as bulletproof as possible.
Yeah.
You know, but okay. I mean, it's literally like the equivalent of, you know, username and password, you know, like Mac OS.
Right.
But they already screwed that up.
I know. That's why I brought that up.
You're saying the issue
Couldn't possibly just type in root and don't type in a password and hit enter a couple of times and have it work. That wouldn't it be funny if that's what the IME thing is? It's like root, enter. You're in. What would you like to do with this PC? All right. Let's get away from this security stuff here.
But it's fun and exciting.
I know, but we can go on all night. AMD working on GDDR6 memory controller for future graphics cards. Well, I mean, it's kind of makes sense that that's coming. Like, didn't we hear that GDDR6 was like already like in draft form or something, or as far as spec?
Yeah, but they're going to do their own controller, though. I think that's the...
As opposed to what? Licensing one from Intel? Like, where else do you get the memory controller on a GPU?
Well, they've been dedicated to HBM for 5 years or whatever it's been.
Right.
So just saying, so, you know, and that they're going to shift, although the article is clear, you know, this is not a platform-wide shift. They're going to maintain HBM on the high-end cards, but they're also going to bring out Vega 64 and 56 GDDR5 variants at some point. And then future products, I mean, like the first Navi cards will be HBM, and then they'll transition to apparently to GDDR6 for some of the product line.
All right.
Which, you know, controlling, you know, having their own controller and being in
It's
control
all about
of
costs.
that. Yeah, it saves costs and allows improved
whatever
flexibility.
number is going to be cheaper than HBM because it's easier to implement. PCB is cheap as compared to interposers.
Mm-hmm.
You can redesign, you can respin a PCB in minutes.
And the DDR6 will help with the bandwidth. You know, it'll bring it closer to what HBM can do, right? So
HBM is still a very important part of their plans.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we have not. I think a lot of people were disappointed with Vega, with, you know, HBM2 on Vega being in many areas underwhelming compared to what was promised. But we haven't seen the full roadmap yet for them, or the full. We haven't seen them fully implement this. They're going to take. There was a reason, I think, that they stuck with HBM, and we're going to see the fruits of that, or at least what they hope will be successful fruits of that.
All right. Okie doke. More AMD news. Existing AM4 motherboards will support upcoming Raven Ridge desktop APUs with a BIOS update. That's like in stark contrast to, you know,
some
Intel.
Another
lately.
unnamed company?
No, I'll name them because, you know, like, I mean, heck, we're going like potentially 2 new platforms for each of 2 new generations of CPUs out of Intel.
There's a reason why a lot of AM4 motherboards up until now have had HDMI and DisplayPort connections.
It's like they were thinking of the future.
Yes.
I bet you I bet you they even had some extra pins they weren't using for like maybe some extra power and like some stuff like that. You know, we might need more power over here and might need some more data pins, and I bet they had all that stuff like ready to go. Unlike Intel in this respect, unfortunately. All right, so good news, especially for the AMD folk who, kind of like they like to save a penny or two on their motherboard purchases, more so than the Intel people who just seemingly throw cash at every generation, at least lately.
Okay, then.
Hey, I'm just, it just kind of bugs me a little. They used to be better than that. They need to get back on track.
Wait. Alan, the guy who spent how many $1,000s on mining hardware is complaining about people buying Intel?
They're all Intel platforms, but they're all like dirt cheap ones, like Pentiums.
Alex, we've been over this.
I know.
What Alan has is a mental condition.
Yeah.
And it's just not appropriate anymore. It's just sad.
So you're saying I'm not nice, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying you gotta be aware of the cultural sensitivities of Bitcoin mining syndrome.
Of miners.
I will say that any folks that are Bitcoin mining are probably not worried about the last two generations of the Intel hardware. They're like scoping eBay for like dirt cheap motherboards.
They're following it because every new generation presents a whole new trough of secondhand products that'll hit the market.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. They're still going to be pricey.
The trailing upgrade wave.
Yeah. It bugs me because like I was holding out for like 370. Like, okay, I'll build a rig for myself out of that. And then I find out like the next generation won't work on 370 even.
That's all right.
Which just came out for the current generation.
Yeah.
So it's like, anyway.
You'll be broke. It doesn't matter.
Okay. What is this? BitScope unveils Raspberry Pi. Why do I feel like we talked about this?
I think we talked about it in the office.
I talked about it on Twitch last week. That's what it was. Raspberry Pi cluster, 2,880 CPU cores. So this is for R&D because you're not going to be mining stuff with this. You're not going to be doing brute force anything. It's just, get over 2,000 of something all connected to each other and somehow compile and run code and see if your code can scale to that many cores.
It's all about scaling.
Yeah, it's all about scaling. It's not about speed so much. Now, there's still going to be some optimization, some other stuff that you can only really do once you're on the actual cluster of CPUs. However, this can probably get you most of the way there. And
it's cheap.
It's relatively cheap.
Relatively for the number of cores.
Yeah, it's an expensive box. There are prices in here somewhere. It's
$25,000.
Yeah, it's 20,
under 25.
Yeah. The small one with 1,008 nodes is under $25,000. But
okay,
you have to realize $25,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to the actual.
Yeah. When you're developing for this kind of scale, you've got a budget. An order of multiple orders of magnitude. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And time is critical. You're literally buying time on that system, and it costs a lot. So, because I think some of the comments or somebody was like, won't run Crisis or like any of those other really. Right.
Well, they're saying like this is not. I can't deploy this into an environment where I'm using it to run like actual high core count
weather
workloads.
simulations or
no, you're not.
Nah.
You're
it's
not trying to
that.
run. You're just trying to test against.
This is what you make sure your weather simulation code runs properly.
Yeah.
On.
And I'm sure
not runs fast.
In true Raspberry Pi tradition, they'll find some really unique uses for this beyond that.
Oh, I'm sure.
But its core purpose is
somebody will buy one of these and have it controlling all the light bulbs in their house.
Sure, I'm sure somebody will.
It's just slightly overkill.
A little bit overkill. You have them run all the bulbs.
Raspberry Pi for
maybe.
each bulb.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. XFX teases RX Vega 56 and 64 double edition graphics cards. Double standing for a double fan shrouded cooler.
It's a unique design.
It's a cool looking design. Copper heat pipes in there and Looks like plenty of cooling surface area. I don't know if I have any more pictures here. Oh, there's the back. Nice looking back plate. Actually, it's just like a notch out of the whole card there for that that X.
Yeah, it's got that
X shape.
Negative space thing going on.
Yeah.
Well, they just slapped a corset on it for a while.
So
Yeah, it makes it look skinnier.
If you notice,
sexier.
the rear fan is actually going straight through.
I always notice the rear fan.
It's going straight through the whole card.
Because the PCB is so small.
Yeah, because the PCB is so short. So this is, I mean, that would cool amazingly well because you have heat pipes going to the GPU from a cooler that can actually draw straight through the radiator. So that's pretty sweet.
But all of it hinges on pricing, and we don't know pricing yet or availability. So
I mean, it looks kind of budget. Like the shroud looks kind of
plasticky,
yeah. Like I would hope that that's a kind of a budget. That's a nice metal backplate, but like no telling, obviously.
Yeah,
but it should run pretty cool. Change is good. No,
Microsoft. No.
Keep snoozing.
Down, boy, down.
Man, tragedy averted. Now watch it just reboot anyway.
Yeah, right. You think so?
All right, another RX Vega 64 and 56. Oh, look, 2.5. Oh, wait, maybe these are 3 slot coolers. Nope, 2.5. Triple fan coolers from ASUS, ROG Strix RX Vega 64 and 56.
There's a beast of a card.
Yeah, these are in crazy contrast to the last thing we just looked at because these are almost 12 inches long. Let me look at this. Is there another angle here? Good Lord, look at how tall the PCB is past that's like 2 inches above the top of the backplate. An enormous radiator on there. Triple fan cooler. That's definitely going to have enough cooling power for even those GPUs. But like, look at the frequencies. Like that's.
Well, it's still Vega.
It's still Vega.
I mean,
that's the thing. It's like
I don't want to use the phrase "lipstick on a pig" because that's truly. I mean, Vega has some uses, but Vega is a product that has severe limits in its frequency and its compute. No cooler of any reasonable price is going to change that. I mean, you're not going to get this and be beating a 1080 Ti.
Yeah, and the problem is that it's not really a problem. So there is one benefit. The beefier you go with the cooler on these, they're going to put out the same amount of heat. You can't necessarily overclock them any further. You might get 1% or something. I mean, you're splitting hairs at that point. However, the card will run quieter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a...
you will get that. If you care about your system running quieter, sure. But don't get one of these because you think you're going to get an extra 10 or 20% overclock out of the thing. Because it's just not going to happen.
It'll hit boost and stay there. It's probably not going to wobble downwards.
Sure, but I mean, you can hit boost and stay there even on the stock versions of those cards if you crank the fan up to 100%, and it sounds like a hairdryer, but like it's possible, right? So these, you'll be able to do that same thing, but it won't sound like a hairdryer. It'll be reasonably quiet.
Theoretically.
It should be. It should be. Based on the size of that cooler, and I mean, ASUS is pretty good. And they've got that cooler design down pretty good. That triple fan cooler, like the, the last, I think the 1080 Ti that had a triple fan cooler from them, which I think took a long time to come out. It might not even be out yet.
I don't think it's out yet.
It's like it's been in YouTube videos and people have reviewed it and stuff like that. But if anything, is just now out. But like that card was a beast as well. You could barely hear the thing. It was cooling just fine. It stayed at like 60C or 70C or something like that at full load. Right. And it was quiet, right? So ASUS has got that the cooler design down.
That begs the question, though, like for a customer who wants to go Vega, are they going to care about keeping it quiet and and performing along the lines of a standard boost Vega card, or are they going to want to squeeze every ounce of power to try to limit that gap between NVIDIA's products?
And you can still do that. You can still raise the power limit even further on this. It's just that typically you just get diminishing returns big time with this particular chip, right?
But if you're talking 30 or 50 bucks, yeah, I could see it. If you're talking an extra 100, 150, that's a tough choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vega
It's a
does
hard
not
sell at
have a
that
lot
price.
of room. Vega 56 is a different story.
No.
Vega 64 does not
Yeah.
have a lot of pricing room because you very quickly get to the point where you should just buy NVIDIA, even if you don't.
No.
Even
But if you want to
morally
set it right in
opposed.
between the water and the air, that's a bit on the pricey side.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So do I have a thing we can like?
All right, Alan's going to monologue now about.
No. It's not going to be vague. Who was it that had the good article about it though?
Tim just posted one like right as we started.
All right. Well, then there we go.
There's a website called PCPer.
Yeah, I will go to this. I will go to this PCPer website. Thank you, Tim, for getting that up there. So Nicehash, which we've had a couple of articles. The main reason I'm bringing this up is because Ken has published several articles in the past. Most recent one was about Nicehash mining, and like how to set up the client and how to set up a wallet and how to do all these things to make that process work. It was a pretty good article. Kind of walked you through the whole process there. And prior to that, years prior to that, did an article just on Bitcoin mining in general, and we talked about power rates because that was actually significant and into the, because it wasn't paying that great back then, even though because the value of Bitcoin was much lower and et cetera, right? So fast forward to by this point, where Nicehash is a huge exchange, which was the largest exchange for hashing power. It's not just exchange for, it's a little bit complicated the way it works. Like, as sellers and buyers both meet at this marketplace thing, and people want to buy hashing power instead of just buying, say, Bitcoin. They want to buy hashing power to mine some Bitcoin. Maybe it's a little bit cheaper or something. Maybe they want to mine something else that's the same algorithm as Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Gold or something, which I think is also SHA-256. Anyway, so you had all these people with their orders in at this site. So there's an amount of money there. And then these guys would pay out based on how much you're mining or how fast your profits are coming in or whatever from you not donating, but selling your hashing power to this exchange as well. So presumably there's a lot of money in flight, right? And I don't remember what the last number was, but Nicehash would frequently tweet, how much their payouts were. And it would usually be some huge, like very, very big number. Like,
when we were doing it this summer, it was, $6 to $9 million.
Yeah.
A week. Payout, a week, yeah.
They were doing these weekly payouts, right?
And that was when Bitcoin was a sixth of its current value.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was only what got paid out.
Yeah.
So you had other people that were getting payouts per day, and then you have all of the people that had purchased hashing power, and that money was also in their system. So think of all that amount of just volume, right? Turns out that volume at any given point in time, specifically yesterday morning point in time, happened to be, does he have the whole number? 4,736 Bitcoin. That's 4,700 Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now, as we're talking, is $14,000 per one Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And this number's been going up. When it tells you what Bitcoin's done in the past 24 hours. This number was initially $58 million worth of Bitcoin that had been walked off with somehow. We don't know if it's inside job, whatever. But
let's clarify that. So it's gone.
It's gone.
It's just gone. His money is gone.
It is. Well,
so gone. Okay. Well, it's gone from whoever had a rightful claim to it.
Here's what you have to consider. There have been the whole Silk Road thing, the feds actually followed the blockchain and ended up tracking down who it actually went to, right? That's one of the beauties of the blockchain. Everything is public. You can literally follow the money. There's no way to hide where it goes. Eventually, no matter what you pass it through, you could still follow it. Mm-hmm. You might have to go to an exchange and pull their record or something, but anywhere it goes, they're going to be followed. And $66 million worth of something is a lot of incentive for people to follow the money.
Sure.
Are there any casinos that take Bitcoin yet?
I don't know, but the thing is that wherever this person or people tries to move this out to real money, pretty much every place that can exchange for real money or any assets that are expensive are gonna want to know who the person is.
Perhaps.
And all the coins went to a single wallet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they all initially funneled into one, and now they've made a bunch of hops after that. And
so it has been disseminated now?
It might still be in the same wallet, but like, regardless of what happens, you can follow it, is my point, right?
I mean, you could wash it through like altcoin exchanges where it's actually taken outside of the blockchain and put into an external system and brought back in. But
you could, but then
that takes time and effort.
But then if there was, say, a mob of angry Redditors from the Nicehash group on Reddit who are very good at following this stuff, well, I didn't even think to look at any of this, but these guys were all posting about exactly where it was, and they found it like almost right away. Right?
I have no doubt that more information will come out, and maybe even a resolution.
Maybe.
I don't think you're ever going to see your Bitcoin again.
Oh, no, I don't. I would be shocked if that happened.
And Steam, apparently Steam today stopped accepting Bitcoin, so they won't be laundering it through Dota hats.
That's true. That's true.
Because that's a thing.
That could totally be a thing.
There's probably a nice casino in Morocco that can accidentally lose some things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of fringe financial institutions that would want, seeing how Bitcoin has risen recently, would love to get to pay out to get that Bitcoin right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I will say that a lot of people were skeptical just based on, because Nicehash kind of like clammed up. It was like, oh crap, and just like everything just went down. And then like an hour later, you get this semi-vague message about maintenance.
Is that why Spectrum was down last night?
No, that was before this.
Okay.
So I was trying to fix my internet, and then it came back up. And then like 10 minutes later, Nicehash went down. And I was like, I'm still trying to fix my internet. Yeah. Like, I'm thinking my internet's like went down again. Nope. The entire, everybody mining to Nicehash went down. So they finally put up a statement. It was like 8 hours later when they actually said what the heck was going on. And it's basically, we informed the authorities. There was a big a compromise in our payment system, et cetera, et cetera. I really don't get why you would have what appears to be the full volume of their Bitcoin like online. In other words, on anything that can initiate a transfer to anything else, right? Maybe they had some offline, but it didn't seem so, because that seemed like, that number seemed about right for how many orders and stuff would be in the system. So anyhow, they're saying they're not saying they're gonna try to make it right and pay people back or any of that, because if you don't got the money, you just can't pay people back. But
you create a new cryptocurrency, blackjack and hookers.
Well, yeah,
I think
that's the problem. It's a little bit too small to actually start up a new economy. That's completely separated. Like
ground floor.
It's a lot of money, but it's not quite that much money.
Yeah, and there was something.
Spend or hold out for more.
So they say they're stopping all operations for the next 24 hours, which implies they're going to try to start it back up tomorrow. I don't know how many people are going to be around to use it, but I will guarantee you that any miners that try to use that are going to be a lot more cautious about how much they leave in there.
Yeah.
The default for Nicehash, if you don't use their internal wallet, is that it just pays out daily, which is actually fine, because if you lose like half a day, okay. Too bad, so sad. You just use something else or whatever. But, if you were using their wallet and you weren't necessarily transferring it out every day, because the fees kind of stack up, so it's more efficient to transfer it out less frequently, they got a little bit burned. Just a little.
Yeah.
Depending on how long they waited. So, buyer beware, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, there was another interesting stat that I just stumbled across today that, because, Bitcoin was sort of in the news, strangely enough. Did you know that it uses, the total global mining community is using as much power as the country of Serbia? It's freaking insane. Like, they're talking about 87,563,223 kilowatt hours a day. Currently.
Yeah.
It's insane.
So I will say there has been some interesting results or fallout from this in particular, because when these guys went down, all the hashing power went away, or at least all of their hashing power went away. And it was a pretty decent percentage for at least some of the currencies, right? There are some of the currencies that just purely rely on GPU mining, which basically means they rely on mining pools, right? Some mining pools only have certain algorithms, like it gets a, you know, progressively more limited in scope. Nicehash was one of the ones that supported most of everything, especially if you use their legacy miner. It had like 20 algorithms in it or something. So that meant that the rates jumped up. The payout rates jumped up on the other mining pools. Yeah. You know, ones that are equivalent to Nicehash.
You were doing pretty good for yourself earlier today.
It's still 3 times what it was.
Yeah.
Like right now.
You got to question a currency that the value of it goes up because a bunch of it got stolen.
So in the heyday of the Nicehash mining,
yes, it's rarity, but that's just weird.
In the heyday of the Nicehash mining, which was like June, a 1080 Ti would pay out like $10 a day. Thereabouts, right? That was like the highest it was going. That's when everybody went nuts and started buying GPUs, and like we even fired up like all the cards we had in the office.
It got real hot in here this summer.
Got pretty hot during the summer, yeah. And then, you know, the AC was running, and then Ryan got the first bill and then just shut everything off.
No,
he lasted a couple months.
He kept it for a while, and then the electricity company showed up.
Oh yeah, and they're like,
we had to convince them we were not.
They're like, you're drawing too much for your service here.
Independent medication providers.
Yes, we were not growing anything. You're free to walk around the building. Yeah. Anyway, so that was $10 a day, you know, back in June, and that was the highest it was. And then it dropped to like 3 for several months in a row and kind of crept up a little bit. It's 20 right now.
Yeah.
During the period where when Nicehash was down, and like initially, like people hadn't realized, like they were just kind of waiting on Nicehash to come back. So they weren't even bothering shifting over to another pool, right? Which completely starved the pools.
Yeah, further constraining the supply.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was like between 50 and 70 per day rate of payout. Not that it was going to stay that way, because as more people pile in there, you know, it settles back down. But it's still pretty high right now. It kind of makes me think that a lot of people have just kind of like, screw this. Like, you know, some people went several weeks with like their single GPU mining.
Yeah.
So it's sitting there, the fans are cranked all the time, you know, it's kind of an annoyance. You're holding out for getting your like point, I don't remember what the minimum increment is now for Nicehash to actually do the weekly payout. But, you know, there were a lot of people that were in that boat, that it was like, and it was getting progressively worse because the increment stayed the same. And the increment in the number of Bitcoin stayed the same, but the value of the Bitcoin has gone up 4 to 6 times, right? The hashing power, like dollar value, stays roughly the same. So that means that if you were mining with like the same card over the course of the past 3 or 4 months, the rate of Bitcoin you got in cut in like 1/6 of what it was.
Yeah.
Right. So that meant that if you had been getting weekly payouts, you were potentially 2 weeks or every 3 weeks.
Right.
Because it just got more and more stretched out, right? So they had these guys like, oh yeah, Christmas is coming up. I'm finally gonna get that payout. It's worth a lot more now. It's a bigger chunk of cash. I'm just gonna, you know, buy some Christmas presents with that or whatever. And
gone. Although also I wonder, I mean, obviously you and people really into this are watching every minute, seeing what their mining pools are doing. But how many people really had it running in the background on a headless box or on a computer in the guest room?
Oh, sure.
And they don't even know anything. It's been less than 24 hours. They may not know anything happened.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the thing that caused this huge swell was a combination of professionals and governments getting into it, as well as a huge swath of people saying, I don't need to figure anything out. I can download this app, click a button, and let it go. And that could be a significant chunk of people that just still don't know what's happened.
Yeah.
Or their systems are sitting there idle waiting for the next instruction, you know, and yeah.
It's true.
I think, you know, the next couple of days we'll see really as it normalizes.
I'm just curious to see, because usually there's an awful lot of Ponzi scheme style things that come up in the Bitcoin thing.
You don't say.
I was actually telling you about a couple of them the other day, right? Guess what? One of them folded.
Ah, really? Already?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, like, somebody come up, we have a bot that, does trades.
That was like yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Not that long ago.
So, somebody will come up and they'll make a nice looking website and they're like, hey, send me your Bitcoin. I'll put in this thing. It pays out this much per week or whatever, 20% gain per week or whatever. And, it entices you, right? And then they charge you some fee if you want to pull it out early. So like 7% loss if you want to pull it out early, or they make up, these numbers to make it just enough for people to like put some stuff in there. And then they let it go for a month or two. So then now word of mouth starts happening and et cetera, et cetera. And then right before it's supposed to pay out, it just goes away. Mm-hmm. Right.
Does Bernie Madoff have internet access in prison?
So like that kind of stuff happens. Right. But Nicehash, you wouldn't have expected them to do it. And the reason I bring that up is because they get a percentage of everything that passes through them. Mm-hmm. And they have a crap load of volume. Yeah. So even even if somebody, say there was a bad actor in there, that like, say the whole upper chain of Nicehash actually was in on this. And they're like, oh yeah, that's just it. Time to cash out. Mm-hmm. It's actually counterintuitive, because if you'd go for 2 or 3 more months, they would have just made that in profit.
Unless they have insider knowledge of
that Bitcoin's about to crash or something.
Yeah, maybe the U.S. and China agree to a regulation scheme or something, and they
maybe. I don't know. There's an awful lot of.
I mean, net neutrality is about to fall, and who knows how that would can.
Well, just for you guys.
As it is right now, there's probably at least another couple of weeks that is just gonna bubble Bitcoin.
If I give Jeremy the finger through the camera, do we have to put an explicit tag on the podcast?
Probably.
Okay.
But over the next couple of weeks,
you guys are killing me.
Like,
my head is exploding.
Sorry. Within the next couple of weeks, there's supposed to be like Bitcoin futures on the actual exchanges, actual stock market.
The actual markets, yeah.
So just that's even more and more hype, and I'm sure Bitcoin's probably going to even go up a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised, because it's just so much hype.
Yeah.
And then once the exchange is open, so many people just throwing more money at it. So,
well, it's a risky thing. Let's not kill Josh. I will close by saying Nicehash missed a huge opportunity to not put a frowny face on their logo. For this note,
they totally there were people. Somebody on Twitter, I think, replied, and they made it a smiley, and it was like there was blood coming out of the eyes and stuff. They should have just stole that logo and stuck it there. But. Yeah.
All right. Well, you'll survive. Everybody.
Fillmore knows mines.
Say
probably
again?
Where it all went if he does.
Yeah, I mean, who
Canadian joke.
But if you were one of the angry mob on Reddit, just chill out. It's gone. It's gone. You ain't gonna get it back. Just pick up. There's other mining pools out there. There's already like Reddit threads pointing people to like, here's the other. Mining pools, and the ones that pay out like every 2 hours and crap like that. So can't get burned by more than a couple hours worth of stuff if you're really worried about it. So anyway, all right.
Well, we ignore the rundown. I don't think we prepared picks this week.
Yeah.
The unusual. So,
wow, Jim's mic just died.
Oh, sorry.
He's just standing on
I put my foot on that little cough. What do they call it?
The cough drop.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to say, thank you, Josh. I was going to say, ignore the rundown. There are no picks this week because of the unusual
I picked my
staffing.
nose.
Well, sure. Okay. So there's at least one real thick, long, dried out one, and then a stringy one. And then that's it.
I can eBay him if you want.
All right.
That's okay.
So you too can share in my picks of the week.
We feel it.
PCPer.com/podcast.
Yeah.
Where you can go to see the show notes.
Join us Wednesdays at 10 Eastern.
Yes.
At PCPer.com/live. And
if you want
to PCPer.com/subscribe to join our mailing list, which we only use to let you know when we go live. Although maybe one day Alan will have to steal it to sell to regain all the money he lost.
Somebody will hack. Somebody will hack the.
No, it's just a plain text email. Don't worry about it. We don't give it away. It's just to let you know when we're about to go live for this kind of stuff, as well as our special events throughout the week.
And there's definitely not a hidden mining program in it that runs every time you launch the email.
No, that's on the website.
Yeah, that's on the website.
Yeah. And in this video player right now.
That was actually a thing going out around.
That was, yes.
Oh, it's still going around.
Yep.
All right.
Anywho.
Yeah, with that, I'm Alan Malmontano.
I'm Jeremy Hallstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm so sorry. Ryan will be back next week.